Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Analyst here, and I hope all of you guys are having a good morning, evening, wherever you guys are from. And welcome back to another Bitcoin technical analysis. And in this video today, I want to discuss the recent price movements that Bitcoin's been having, because it's up nearly $1,000 from its swing low a couple of months ago. And now that it's up from $3,100 to $4,000, it's starting to hit a little bit of resistance, but that's not without breaking some major barriers on the way up. Now that we are over our first overbearing resistance line and we are hitting this $4,000 rejection zone, we're going to be making sense as to why it stopped here, but whether or not it can actually break the zone and continue to go higher, or whether or not it's going to break and actually fall back down into this bear market and elongate it for, a further branch of time. So if you guys are interested, go and stick around for the video. And do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button, as it does help out the channel a lot. But that being said, let's go ahead and dive on into this, because there is a lot to talk about in this video, especially with how volatile Bitcoin's been. So first things first, guys, I want to talk about how it broke this overbearing resistance line that we've had for the entirety of the new year. So ever since Bitcoin broke down below that $6,000 range, we were forming this giant pennant of sorts, and at least this resistance line was very verified. We had one, now two, now three separate swing high touches, verifying that, hey, this resistance line is something significant and it's not something to take lightly, and it was continually pushing us back downwards. But with this recent price run, what this has been able to do is actually break this line and what seemingly is approaching higher highs. Now, that has not been something that we have seen in over, I think it has been 13 months on Bitcoin. The last time that Bitcoin had a higher high on its candle on a swing high candle chart was back in, I believe, December of 2017. So all of 2018, all of 2019 so far, we have not had a higher swing high on our price action candle chart on any kind of a large scale movement. If we go back here, we can actually see that constant higher lows all the way through this ever since the swing high, and we're even seeing that in the trend that we're in right now. So with this actually breaking a micro resistance line, or excuse me, a macro resistance line, this actually gives us a decent chance at conquering a higher high and breaking this downtrend that we've seen for the last 13 months or so. So with this happening, why did Bitcoin stop here? Why didn't it conquer some of these higher highs? And the answer is fairly obvious. What we have over here is we have an experienced and detailed resistance and support line that has been getting used for a number of touches over here. So I want to kind of highlight this before we move any deeper into this chart. Of course, starting over here, you have this line getting used as support 1, then 2, then 3, now 4. It broke support, started getting used as resistance, and now of course this trend continues, and it reached over here, and now it's getting used as resistance again. Now, the good news is if it can break this, it will use it as support in the same way that this overbearing resistance will be support now. If it can break this line of resistance, this trend line, then it will use this as support as well. Now, we are seeing a little bit of rejection over here, and when I'm looking at my indicators and oscillators, I'm noticing one thing pretty heavily, and that's the fact that all of them are starting to round. They look like they're all starting to run out of juice, no matter which one it is. And that is generally not a good thing. I'm noticing what was almost, a seemingly double top on most of these indicators and oscillators, or mainly on the indicators, not so much the oscillators. But when I'm looking at this, again, MACD is rounding, same previous level that it closed before on February 8th, I believe. Yeah, so on February 8th, it rounded there, double topping over here. Again, February 19th, rounding again. Not generally a good thing to see. But the good news, I guess, is that your oscillators are still pointing back upwards. Same thing with your RSI. RSI starting to round over here. Not necessarily a good thing. You are getting slight bearish divergence on your 1 hour chart, but that is, again, 4 times less powerful than the 4 hour, just because it's 1 hour instead of 4 hours. Smaller time scales are less significant than larger time scales. Over here on your stochastics, again, this looked like it was starting to round. However, it just actually reached a higher high. So that's pretty good as well. And when I'm looking at this, we can actually cut this in half, because if we're wanting to know whether or not this is rounding, we can actually adjust the time scales. And this, even on the 2 hour, this thing's still pointing straight upwards. So we'll go ahead and actually, I take that back. It has started rounding down, at least on our 2 hour as well, but it's still a higher high. Now, when I'm looking at this stuff, what this does and what this allows me to know is that whether or not these bulls are leaving the market, whether or not they're starting to get exhausted. And while they are looking like they're starting to run out of a little bit of gas, it could not necessarily be over yet, because the MACD is a little bit of a lagging indicator. And over here on our RSI and our stochastics, what we're able to see is that these things are still forming higher highs, and that's actually what we're seeing in the price action of the candle chart, as well as that when I'm looking at this, I woke up this morning and we actually formed another higher high. Now, with this higher high being formed, you now have 2 rejection candles on a 4-hour chart of Bitcoin. Right over here, again, you can see this rejection candle hit, rejected, came back through, tried to pierce through, did not get the chance, resistance was too strong, and it actually broke back down. So now what you have is you actually have a red candle closing over here on Bitcoin underneath resistance. It's the first red candle that's actually getting shown after a rejection line, or after a rejection candle underneath a resistance line. So when I'm looking at this, again, not necessarily good, but it's not necessarily too bad either, because of the fact of, if this is all the retrace has been thus far in Bitcoin, and this is how much it's gone up, that's telling me that the bulls are still pretty substantial to the fact that they're able to keep this price action up here. So when I'm looking at this, what I have is a couple of targets. So if I'm longing this, which again, I probably am not going to long this at resistance, if you can get candle body closings over this resistance and hold it and use it as support, by all means, you know, free long this, tight stop loss, and that's really my game plan here. However, as long as we're sitting under this resistance line, I'm still bearish because of the fact this is still lower highs even if we end here. As great as this run has been, and you know, the massive amount of price movement that we've seen, and nearly $700 over the course of the last week or two, or I think it's actually just been the last week, so $700 over around the last week and a half, even with how great that is, it's still a lower high on a macro chart, and that's what concerns me more than anything. We're still in a bear market that has not changed. We still are forming lower highs, and that is one of the biggest things for me. However, if we can break this, again, I think that would be substantial. That would be huge, especially if we break this $4,200 zone over here. Now, if you're in the Patreon, you guys would already know about this. I already did a whole write-up on what's happening over here, my thoughts, what I'm trading, and where my targets are for all of this. So immediately, I'm looking at the 4,100 zone, previous high, also part of resistance over in this area. It's going to be pretty obvious as to why this is it. 4,100 a little bit weaker, 4,200 extremely going to be a hard level of resistance. Not only does it have to work with this overbearing line of resistance that we've had the entirety of this bear market, but it also, you know, as you guys can see, the entirety of this bear market has just been giant resistance. But in addition to this, it also has to worry about a previous candle top over here, which is the 4,200 area. Now, this area has been tested, you know, a decent amount of times. So maybe if it can get back up here, it'll finally be able to break this area. However, until it starts forming higher highs and closing over some more overbearing resistance, I really can't be too bullish on Bitcoin. It's still a bear market. The trend is still your friend. If it's showing rejection underneath resistance, I am not going to necessarily long it at resistance. That is the highest level of risk possible as a trader. So when I'm looking at this, I'm really not too tempted either way. I was talking to someone in the Discord earlier about why I was looking for some significant bearish divergence or bullish divergence one way or another, at least on a 4-hour chart, because right now, while there is speculation as to whether or not it could get rejected here, our indicators and oscillators aren't telling us one way or another that this is bearish divergence or that this is bullish divergence. I would say in this area, as long as it's under resistance, I'm actually kind of bearish on this. It's been a great run, but I expect with all great runs comes some sort of pullback. So what I've done is I've actually drawn a fib chart up on here, and I'm looking for popular retracements such as the 382, which is probably going to be the first one that I'm looking at. So my targets towards the upside, if you guys are on Patreon, you guys already know those. I do kind of have them marked on here as well, but at least towards the downside. Actually, let's go ahead and talk about this, because if this does break down towards the downside, and if this does get rejected by resistance here, you actually put Bitcoin in a pretty dangerous area because of the fact that it could very well form a rising wedge in this situation. And that's what makes me more nervous than anything, is that if Bitcoin does get rejected in here, it very well could see a rising wedge formation and continuation pattern play out. So here's the rising wedge in this neon blue over here. Again, resistance up top, support down bottom. And if this does play out, I would see a breakdown probably again, hopefully somewhere to around 3,700, probably somewhere around that area roughly. If it does, hopefully it would be able to rebound once again, form a higher high, probably just over 4,000, 4,050 range, get rejected, and then break that right back down. So if it does get rejected here, I would probably see something like this, maybe, you know, a bounce, and then maybe probably hit support, then come back up, get rejected, and that would actually be really good if it got rejected in this area from this 4,200 and then broke back down. Now, if it broke back down, it could catch itself on one of two areas. So you could catch itself on this area, it could catch itself on this area, or it could catch itself on this area. So there's a numerous amount of places that this really could catch itself, because all three of these areas over here are serious support. And of course, you have consolidation horizontal support over in here as well. And the unique thing about this chart is that this bottom support would actually line up really well with a double bottom over in this area. So maybe that will play out as well. Again, just speculation at this point if this is a bad, you know, bearish case scenario. So we will have to see. There's really not too much information as to say you must long this or you must short this right now. More often people think that I'm always in a trade, when in reality, I probably take less trades than most of the people that are trading Bitcoin. Again, I like to be smart. I like to make the trades come to me. And when I see proper reasons and proper divergence and convergence as to whether or not I want to make a trade, such as from indicators, oscillators, formations, rejections, trend lines, things like that, then I will make the trade. But in this area over here, again, it just might not be worth the trade. If anything, I might be entering a short over in here. And if you're in Patreon, you'll get updated as if, you know, as to whether or not I actually do enter a short. But that is the only thing that I'm really looking at in this area. If it, you know, if it continues to stay under resistance, I might as well enter a short. I'll put a stop loss like super tight or something like that, just because of the fact that resistance is over here. So if it does make a higher high, I'll immediately get stopped out with almost no loss. But that might just be what I'm looking at right now. So again, currently a little bit more bearish than bullish. It's still under this resistance trend line, and that's what really has me captivated in this range. So that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I hope you guys did enjoy. Hopefully this did bring some much needed information to the macro of this trend and what's happening. But it's been a great price run. You know, Ethereum's really been leading the game over here, and it has really just been carrying Bitcoin on its back. But we'll be doing an Ethereum to BTC, or excuse me, an Ethereum to USD technical analysis in the next video. So stay tuned, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment in the comment section down below of what your guys' thoughts are, and I will see you in the next video.